The stream is preparing to go live. Not quite there yet.
Victoria,
your
iPad is saying
we are now live.
BC iPad, so you might want to change it so people can recognise. Yep.
Yeah, I don't know how to. I've changed it once, then it went back again. I've given up.
Okay, no worries. Good evening, members and members of the public. Let's start with item 1, apologies for absence.
Thank you, Chairman. There are no apologies.
Thank you. Minutes of the previous meeting, 20th of October. I'll just remind everyone, members of the executive, are you happy for me to sign those minutes?
Agreed.
Okay, thank you, that's done. Okay, do we have any declarations of interest of any of the items we're going to be discussing this evening? Okay, I've got Councillor Bates and Councillor Jennings-Evans.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I have 2 to declare. Firstly, under item 5, the petitioner is a fellow trustee of the Old Dean Community Group, to which I'm obviously a trustee, and so I also know him personally. So that's a non-pecuniary interest. And also with regard to one of the exempt items, I don't know if you want me to do that now or wait until we go into the exempt.
Let's wait until the exempt, please.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, Councillor Jennings-Evans and then Councillor Garrett.
Yeah, mine's purely in relation to item 5, in that I have already met with Trevor Hogg to discuss the petition prior to this evening's meeting, just for him to outline their concerns.
Great, thank you. Councillor Garrett.
As with Councillor Bates, I am a trustee of the Old Dean Community Group and also know Trevor Hogg personally.
Okay, thank you. Right, I'm not seeing any others. I know there are 28 or so, 29, and I can only see about 25 on my screen, but shout if it's you. Okay, questions from members. Are there any questions for me as leader or the portfolio holders? Okay, thank you. All right, item 5 then. Petition for security at Old Dean Recreation Ground. Mr. Hogg, if you'd like to take us through it. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman and Councillors, for this opportunity to speak to you. I'm actually the chair of the Old Dean Community Group, which is a registered charity serving Old Dean. Earlier this year, there was a major investment by Surrey Heath Borough Council, Accent and Old Dean Community Group to replace the playground at the Wimbledon Road Recreation Ground in Old Dean. The total spend on that project was well over £200,000. Recently, SHBC voted for money to be spent on security there, with a bund being proposed. In our view, building a bund would be an ineffective remedy to a problem we do not have when there are real security issues that need to be addressed. First, the lighting. One conspicuous item that was not renewed was the lighting on the paths which SHBC are responsible for. The lighting standards are there, but the lights have been left broken for years, despite many complaints and even requests from councillors. Locals will not use the paths after dark because they're felt to be too dangerous. And the police are concerned about this as well. And I have a letter from the Surrey Heath Borough Commander saying that having the lighting working would make their job much easier. Antisocial and criminal behaviour. The new playground was enormously welcome to very many people in Old Dean after so many years of dire neglect. But there are a few people doing things that stop the local community fully enjoying the facility. First, there's been deliberate sabotage of some of the new play equipment. Drug use and dealing is a continuing problem around the playground. And this has been seen going on in the playground even whilst children are present. There have been thefts while children are playing there, and incidents of aggressive, threatening behaviour from a small group of people. The deliberate sabotage may be news to most councillors, as it was only reported on by the manufacturer at the end of last Friday. with the jamming of a piece of metal into the wheelchair roundabout, which was concealed while preventing the use of the roundabout. The manufacturer felt it would have taken some time to do this. There was also a second issue with 2 other pieces of play equipment where the cause is a bit less clear, as bolts with lock nuts were found to be partially undone, and it wasn't clear how those would have come undone other than a deliberate intervention. The pavilion at the Old Dean Recreation Ground has also been out of action for some considerable time due to vandalism. Repairs are currently underway, but the insurers have said that they will no longer cover vandalism due to the repeated issues in the past. Without the pavilion, the 2 football pitches are likely to have little future use, as teams will go elsewhere when the pandemic ends. Properly protected, it could be developed into the location for a cafe or a similar business, which has been very successful in other parks. To deal with the issues I've described, there are 3 investments in security that we're asking you to consider. They're not, in our view, excessive. We think they're what anybody reasonable and prudent would do to protect a valuable asset, especially where the insurance cover is limited. Number 1 would be to put in lighting that works and is robust, to make the footpaths safer and to deter misuse of the area at night. That may also allow the play area to be used a little later in winter, and it will certainly help the police. Number 2 is to put in CCTV recording. We understand the limitations of CCTV, and that CCTV on its own will not magically stop misuse of the playground, but it will encourage some of those responsible to go elsewhere instead of doing what they're doing in a playground, and it will help to identify those involved. Number 3 would be to put an alarm system into the pavilion. They're not an expensive item, and it will again help to deter and allow for a response. So to conclude, the residents of Old Dean want the playground to be fully available for children to play in and for children to be able to use the playground safely. They want to be able to use the paths safely, and they want to be able to use the pavilion facilities. That is most definitely not an unreasonable desire, and then I'm asking you to direct your investment in security to that end. So councillors, thank you for listening.
Okay, thank you very much. Right, we'll open it up. Councillor Garrett.
Thank you,
And Councillor
Leader. Thank you, Leader. I mean, Trevor's quite eloquently covered most of the really relevant points there. I mean, just picking up on some of them, I've actually witnessed a number of youths of probably 13, 14 years of age, 4 or 5 of them smoking some stuff that they shouldn't be smoking in the playground on an irregular basis, unfortunately. From the very beginning, when it first was opened, the playground was really well received, and a lot of people were so happy to see it. But unfortunately, really quite quickly, there was some damage that has obviously happened, and some unsavouries have been there. Now, as Trevor says, CCTV is not going to be a magical fix to that, but as the police have made us aware of in the future, if people report stuff and they know when it's going on, then they can certainly go back to said video archives to try and find out the perpetrators. Again, we know the perpetrators are likely to have all the means of putting hoodies on, etc., but at least we might have some identification, and actually it might be used as a deterrent as well. So I think the light as well. I mean, as an owner of a dog and dog walking, I know a number of people have said they just don't feel safe walking up there at night. It really is very, very dark. So there are light posts, lamp posts there already. So if we can somehow fix the lamp posts and make them more vandal proof, which I know there's a cost involved in that, but that can't be beyond the wit of man to put up a light that is vandal proof. That would be a really good start. And then obviously the security side of things as well. Also, there needs to be some ownership of the residents as well. We need to be in a position where we can report stuff when things happen. And I know that the previous borough commander and I know the new borough commander say that if you report stuff and they build up a portfolio, they know when people are there and what they're doing and when they're doing it, then they can make sure the police are there when potentially these things are going to happen. So certainly there is some education of residents to be done as well. But with these sort of things in place, I do believe that we can maybe stop any more damage and any more unsavoury behaviours going on in the playground.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Bates.
Yes, thank you very much, Chairman. The first thing I want to say is that Mr. Hogg is acting as the chairman of the Aldine Community Group, and neither Councillor Garrett or myself we've deliberately taken a step back because of our obvious interest in this. But I think it's fair to say that that's a very large number of names that have signed a petition for Aldine. I don't remember in all my time as an Aldine councillor having that many signatures. Possibly the proposed closure by county of Pine Ridge School may have been around that kind of figure, but that's a lot of names, and the vast majority of which, as you can see from the report, are from Aldine. So it's not as if it's kind of any kind of wider report. It is a local community concern. Aldine and Town Ward, many of the town residents would also be people with a lot of connections with Aldine. Mr. Hogg has raised 3 points, and I think my own view is that all 3 of these do need to be looked at in detail, and I hope very much and would encourage the executive to do that. I appreciate the lighting should on the face of it be something which we have already got there but isn't working, so that to me should be relatively easy to resolve. The CCTV accept may be a little bit more difficult, and there'll be a wide range of different issues regarding to that, but I do think we should be having further conversations in relation to the CCTV aspect that he raises, because the key part with this is to identify the tiny minority of people who are undertaking this conduct. We don't want to penalise the vast majority of children who are loving this playground. This is a good news story from the council that children in one of our deprived areas are really enjoying this playground, and a tiny minority of people are not enjoying it and they're doing things that they shouldn't be doing. But we shouldn't allow that to happen for the vast majority. And the final area that Mr. Hogg raised is regarding an alarm system. I'm not an expert in alarms, but he says that's not a tremendous amount of money. So I think my own view is I do hope the executive want to take this forward, that if you do want to take it forward, I would hope that the Aldine councillors can be involved in that. We are both community minded, as I think is commonly known. This is an area that we know well. This is a project that is a council success, and we all want to make it continuing to be so. So I really would hope the executive take this very seriously. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. All right. I think it's all been, the position has been put forward very positively, I think, by everyone involved. I think I think there's a good chance that we're going to be pushing on an open door here. I'll just go with Councillor Deitch, and then if I may, Councillor Rebecca Jennings-Evans, this is your portfolio. So I'll ask you where you are from the executive point of view. Councillor Deitch.
Thank you. Just a few things that I hope that the executive would consider here, as well as officers, actually, because this vandalism and what I would call criminal activity, actually, is not exclusive to the Aldine. The Aldine gets an unfair rap in a lot of cases for this type of behaviour, but actually it's happened at the Heatherside recreation ground. You know, within days of that beautiful new play area being installed there, it got vandalised. All the lights were ripped up. You know, and just a real shame. But also, recently it's been happening at Deepcut, at our brand new play area. One thing I'd like the executive and council officers to consider going forward, please, is the provision of this play equipment, because I have a young family, and you know, we use play areas not just in this borough but in other boroughs as well. And one play area, which is a very popular play area, is King George V playing fields in Farnborough. And I remember when that play area was installed, which was quite some time ago, probably over 8-9 years ago, and it's as good today as it was when it was first installed. And they have their problems with vandalism in Farnborough too. And I think that a lot of the problems that we have is actually down to although it looks very nice, this wooden type equipment. And I know the equipment in Old Dean is slightly different, probably a little bit more robust than, say, the stuff we've got at Frimley Lodge. Nonetheless, I think that we need to consider far more robust equipment. I mean, the stuff they put in Frimley Lodge Park when I was first elected probably only lasted about 7 or 8 years and then had to be replaced. That's not long enough to my mind. And I think that, and I have raised this at the relevant scrutiny committees in the past and directly with officers, it's something we need to consider going forward, because we can't keep replacing this equipment over and over again.
Okay,
At the substantial cost that they are.
Some excellent points. Thank you. Okay. Councillor Malvaginam, I'm going to have you just finish because you're on the executive, Councillor Rebecca Jennings-Evans. Councillor Malvaginam.
Thank you, Chair. From what I've seen of the playground and what I hear today, it's definitely a problem. Like Councillor Deed said, it's not unique to Old Dean. The thing we have to consider as a council, and for the exec to consider very seriously, is that once you put all this security in, you are going to move this crowd along somewhere else, because they are not going to stop this habit. So working with the police has to be an important or part of the whole solution, rather than just isolation, doing this in isolation. So we have to actually have the commander taking part in this entire exercise so that the problem doesn't move on. It could move to any part of Old Dean or any part of Camberley, to be honest. So it's something, I mean, all the suggestion which has come from Mr. Hogg seems to be very fair and very reasonable. I think the exec should consider this very carefully and approve it. For example, I don't know how much it's going to cost in insurance. Maybe we should actually top up the insurance as an example. So it doesn't we don't have to keep replacing. If you have to replace it, we can use the insurance money. It's something that can go to the community as a top up to whatever they have to contribute towards insurance. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Malvaginam. Right. I'm going to go to Councillor Jennings-Evans because I think as I said, I think the portfolio should be held. We should hear from you, and let's see where you are from the portfolio holder point of view. Councillor Jennings-Evans.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, so I've already met with Trevor, and as he knows, I'm fully behind trying to find a solution to this issue, in particular provision of CCTV. I've also met with yourself to discuss the issue, and I know from talking to you that potentially we may need to fund this from a different pot than the one intended for what we've put together for security for unauthorised encampments. It's important that we remember that we're listening to the residents here and providing what they need. Of course, the police will be involved. They have been involved already with the unauthorised encampment work that we have done. We will also need to be mindful of the fact that with CCTV comes the issue of the fact that you will be filming areas and playgrounds where there are children. So there are potential legal implications with that we will need guidance on. And I would like to ask that we move forward with this and support it and get officers to investigate how best to fund this, because we will also need to look at the ongoing issues of maintenance so that we can get a real community hub going for Old Dean on that recreation ground. And I'm fully on board with it, but it's just finding which way we're going to fund it and how best to move this forward. And I think that needs to go to the officers for investigation.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Mansfield.
Thank you, Leader. Just as a waiver, I certainly support this totally. But listening to the item and actually doing a bit of research, we may be interested to know that Runnymede Borough Council offer rapid deployment CCTV that can be monitored, and it's something that possibly we may be able to work with them on putting forward. I give that as an idea. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. What I'm going to do, I fully support this. Okay. I think it's excellent. I think it's excellent that so many people, particularly from Old Dean, have signed the petition. As you know, I've said on many occasions, and I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but we work for the residents and we represent the residents, and this is what the residents want. Okay, this is what we should be doing. I think that the community can't do this on its own. The police can't do it on its own, and the council can't do it on its own. But what requires is actually the three legs of that stool have to work together. All right? What I would propose is that we ask the officers to look at the three requests from Mr. Hogg, lighting on the paths, as Councillor Bates has said. If that's already ours and it should be working, then let's look at that urgently. I'll come back to you, Councillor Jennings-Evans. The CCTV, sorry, go on.
I was simply going to say, I have already reported off the back of my meeting with Trevor the 3 lights that are broken, and I have asked him already to get on with that.
Great, good. Okay, CCTV recording, it's whether it's monitored or whether it's just after the event. That's a difficult decision from cost-wise, etc. And an alarm for the pavilion. And I think Mr. Hogg said the pavilion is also out of action, and I think that should be broadened out to just look at that as well. So I think let's have a paper come back to the executive. I would hope, I'm looking for Daniel. Is Daniel Harrison on the call? Daniel, would you say 3 months is enough to get all of the quotes and papers and everything together? A simple nod will be fine. Good man. Okay. Third executive from now, we're looking to bring back a paper, if that's okay with you, Councillor Jennings-Evans. All right, that winds all of that up. But I think we have to understand that if the community doesn't play its part, and what I mean, Mr. Hogg, is obviously be there to help spec it and make us understand what it is you're looking for. But the community has to be involved in this because, frankly, the community sets the tone for these people who think it's okay to do damage and do drugs, etc. The police have got their role to play and the council's got their role to play. So if we all come together, I think we could end up with a good solution. Okay. All right. And Councillor Jennings-Evans, I'll just ask you to take on board Councillor Deitch's points about if there's a play park somewhere in the vicinity, not in the borough, but has lasted for 20 years and is still as good as new, I'd like to know who the manufacturer was. Apart from anything else, I want to buy shares in that company.
It was 10 years, not 20.
Oh, 10 years. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So let's sorry, Councillor Jennings-Evans.
Simply said, happy to take that on board and discuss that with the officers.
Okay. So let's just see. Do I have the support of the executive? Okay, that's carried unanimous. Thank you. Okay. Right, Councillor Page, local enforcement plan. Could you take us through your paper, please?
So we have pushed forward again to bring in an update really to the local enforcement plan. So our existing plan was written in 2014. We've responded to national policy and we're looking at implementing a new local enforcement plan which will enable us to establish our priorities and procedures for investigation of alleged planning breaches. I think this is a little bit more comprehensive. It deals with what we're going to do as a priority, and it looks at the resources that we've got to do that. So I commend this paper to you all.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to ask Councillor Alloway to come in first, because Councillor Alloway, if you don't mind me saying, you contacted me, sent some papers through, which this evening, which I've had a glance at. But if you would just like to raise your points that you raised with me, then the executive will come to a decision.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes. Firstly, I'd like to say the recent additions to resources for enforcement is very welcome. and look forward to engaging with officers. A bit of background, the policy review was requested approximately 12 months ago, which has resulted in the draft before you now. A number of proposals were made to improve the councillor awareness and input into the process of planning enforcement. This was to ensure that councillors are aware as early as possible of enforcement investigations under appropriate confidentiality obligations, and to be able to contribute local knowledge and resident concerns in the process. I would assert this is highly pertinent to a councillor's function. And I appreciate Julia's proposal to enhance notification to councillors recently, but still the means for councillors to contribute is omitted, which doesn't help us represent residents. The proposals are born from historical councillor concerns that we are out of the loop on most enforcements in our ward, unable to communicate effectively with residents to perform our role as councillors, contribute effectively as ward councillors in the process, and that the existing policy in comparison to neighbouring authorities could be enhanced. The proposals were made to improve robustness, communication, and enhance public confidence in the planning enforcement policy. And the proposals have been considered by the community group. I would also make reference to the Local Government Association and Planning Advisory Service document, How Planning Works, Introductory Guide for Councillors, Post-Localism and MPPF. And specific paragraphs in that document. In page 10, the key point, and I quote, councillors have a key role in supporting residents to engage the planning system. And also page 14, the enforcement paragraph, and I quote, the remaining important part of planning process that you'll be aware of as a councillor is around the checking that applicants are delivering what was decided on the planning applications, and things happening in your area are in line with the council aims. Effective planning enforcement is a key activity in development management in ensuring that the strategic vision is not undermined by inappropriate or prejudicial development, and therefore one of the overarching considerations around enforcement actions should be the assessment of impact of development on a local plan and the authority objectives. So there's two key statements there which I suggest underlines the importance of ward councillor involvement in planning enforcement. And in summary, the draft policy presented appears to not accept the majority of proposed enhancements in line with the preceding points that would improve councillor awareness and appropriate contribution in enforcement matters. I would assert the document makes very little, if any, reference to ward councillors, only statutes and powers. This surely means it's missing the LGA guidance recommendations for councillors in planning contribution and enforcement matters. I would assert the document, if I may, I would like to urge the executive not to accept the current draft and reconsider the rejected proposals for adoption where they are not proven to conflict any law, and suitable process be established to avoid any conflict. And I'll be delighted to discuss in detail with anyone and everyone the proposals that so far have been rejected.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Allaway. Thank you. I have seen the report you're referring to, because you sent me it this evening. But let's hear from Councillor Page as the portfolio holder. You've heard what Councillor Allaway has suggested.
Yes, and what I'd like to do at this juncture is to thank Councillor Allaway for some of the suggestions which were very good, and we have actually incorporated some of those, and I'm grateful to him, out of all the councillors, to stand up and provide some information for us. But I do think we're mixing our drinks here. We have a planning process which councillors can be involved with, because we get information about what planning applications are coming along. And planning enforcement is sort of after the fact. And you will see in the annex that some of Councillor Allaway's questions have been answered by the experts in the field, which certainly isn't me, but Julia Greenfield and the team. And so some of the reasons that some of those suggestions have been not rejected, but you know, put aside on this occasion, are there for all to see. Our enforcement action is discretionary, and one of the key objectives is to filter out non-planning related frivolous and vexatious complaints from the public, and such complaints impact significantly on our limited resources. So I think it's all about our process, the planning side of the process, which is open for all to provide their support or objections, or to be engaged right down from parish level, if it's an area of parish, or a ward level to be engaged. And certainly councillors have got the ability to call planning applications in. I think on the planning enforcement side, as again, I say it's after the fact, but you have the ability to talk to planning enforcement as councillors and make representation. I think the policy that we've written is as robust as it can be, and I think it fits the bill. I don't think that we need to spend much more time taking this paper off the table. I think we ought to push the paper through and all get on with it. So that's my view.
Thank you very much. Councillor Wheeler and then Councillor Bate.
Thank you, Leader. First and foremost, I'd like to say a huge congratulations and thanks to Graham Allaway, who picked this matter up very shortly after being elected. He and I met with Councillor Hawkins and raised this and a number of concerns with him at the time. And as a result of that meeting, a policy that was due to be reviewed in 2014 is finally now in 2020 coming forward for review. I do share some of Councillor Allaway's concerns. I think it's important that, although I accept that enforcement happens after the event, I certainly know that my inbox has more enforcement issues in it than almost any other subject. And I'm quite sure that Julia would reiterate that my particular ward, or our particular ward, has an awful lot of enforcement issues. And enforcement is one of those very emotional subjects. Something which may not seem important in one area is of huge importance to another, and can have a very serious detrimental effect on our residents' ability to enjoy their own space and their living space. The amount of stress that a lack of action causes an individual resident, I don't think we should frivolise or not take full consideration of. So although premises, for example, not sticking to their opening hours, and I'm quite sure that Councillor White will be able to think with me of a number of cases where this has occurred, the stress that causes the resident is huge, because they are living that extra 15 minutes, 20 minutes, half an hour, whatever it is. The behaviour of neighbours on neighbours causes an enormous amount of stress. And I think to have something which is completely clear, that is easy for all members to access at all times, even at the point at which it is first raised with the council, is really important. So for that reason, and I think that from the conversations and some of the comments that have been made, both from yourself, Leader, is that maybe not all members of the executive have had enough time to fully consider the details of this paper, that a deferment for it to come back to the next council meeting with just, I think there's just a couple of real sticking points in there for us, would be a much better use of time than going to a full call-in process. So I would urge a deferment on this paper, and maybe the opportunity to have a virtual roundtable meeting with the portfolio holder, who I think was contacted some time ago, and I'm looking at Graham to look here to see if he nods, was contacted some time ago, but actually hadn't come back in a way which enabled us to have a conversation with him. So I would be really grateful if the executive could consider deferring this to the next executive meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wheeler. Councillor Bates.
Thank you, Leader. I don't have too much more to add because I think there are two group experts who've already spoken. But I just want to flag up 3 points that are in relation to the paper that I think need further clarity. The first is in the officer report under 16.2, where it's being suggested that changes to the plan are agreed with the executive head of regulatory. My view is that that should be done in consultation with the portfolio holder. In reality, that would probably happen anyway. I appreciate that we're talking here about national policies, but nonetheless, I think that's an additional area of member involvement. All 3 of these relate to member involvement, and it's the same theme that has been touched upon by Councillors Allaway and Wheeler as well. The second area is in the point raised by Councillor Allaway in his annex, which is in relation to 2.3, where if you look under, it says Allaway 6, and it says part agreed. And the reason it says part agreed is because having had lengthy discussions with officers over the course of this year, a new informal internal process has been set up. It's been set up a few weeks ago, which was done in discussion with officers and agreement with them to, again, try and get this balance between the need for officers to have confidence about the legal processes, which must be obviously essential, but coupled with the need for members to undertake the roles to which they've been elected to serve. And at the moment, there seems to be some concern around the balance of that. So there is a process which has been set up as a result of that, which isn't directly referred in the report, but is underpinning this. And I have sought and received reassurance around that today, which I was pleased that that is going to continue going forward. But I think it should be, in my view, clarified further in this report. And the final point I wanted to make was in regard to the policy under 2.8, where we're referring to internal reviews of cases to ensure the decisions are consistent. And whilst I have no doubt that this happens already, I think it is important for the public to be clear that that should involve members as well. So it should involve, in my view, the portfolio holder, or alternatively, the chairman and vice chairman of the planning committee. And the reason for that, again, is just to ensure that there is member oversight of that. It's not for members to get involved directly in individual cases, but it is reasonable for us to oversee the work and the themes that are involved in that. So I hope that actually this is given careful thought. I'm disappointed Councillor Page just wants to rush it through, as he seemed to indicate, because it's a very serious matter, less in my ward than some others. I'm sure that was just the unfortunate wording that he said, but it is something which is very important to our residents. And as you rightly said with the LD matter, we're elected to serve our residents and we're elected to listen to them. And these are matters that we as elected representatives, this is the voice that they're wanting us to say. So I hope that you do reflect on that carefully. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other, anyone else wishing to speak on the matter? No, no one I'm seeing on my screen. Okay. I think Councillor Allaway, you've made some good points. I think backed up by Councillor Wheeler and Councillor Bates. I have actually read the report. The report I was saying that Councillor Wheeler said perhaps was a reason to delay it was actually the comments that Councillor Allaway had sent me was the one that I was referring to, not the actual report. I think I absolutely believe that enforcement is a really, really important issue. Right? I think the way you said it, Councillor Wheeler, about it can make some people's life an absolute nightmare. Right? You picked on one there about pubs staying open longer. I hadn't heard that one, but there's others where people have done things where they've taken other people's land and all the rest of it. It's just, this is very, very important. But for me, it comes down to three things. It comes down to, one, I think that it's a resource issue of the officers, and I have been working with Mr. Passion, who has put in another enforcement officer in planning, and actually has put in another enforcement officer in corporate. And our intention is, during the restructuring that will inevitably happen when the new chief exec arrives, I want enforcement to be very high on the list of priorities to make sure that we're doing that. And I think resources, for me, my inbox also gets a number of people who are worried about enforcement. Why aren't things happening? And I fully endorse there should be more resource. I also think that the ward councillors, not just the portfolio holders, but the ward councillors, should be very much informed. And I think communication is very, very important. And I would fully endorse that the communication needs to be better with the ward councillors. Where I have a problem, and of course, as Councillor Wheeler suggested, if the executive goes with the report, then the council may take a view on this. But where I have a problem is involvement of the ward councillors. Every enforcement that I have been involved with in terms of being reported to me, there's not one of them that is black and white. It's very, very complex. And someone has to take a view that is what is right to the law. And I find that the officers are best placed to do that, not the ward councillors. So in terms of asking, looking at the report that Councillor Alloway has given, I'm afraid, Councillor Alloway, I always said I would be honest with you, but you may not like the answer that I give. Okay. I have to say that looking at the answers that the officers and Councillor Page have given, I do think that what they're doing is they're saying we're trying to take a view that we're going to take a straight down the line view, that each enforcement issue will be dealt with on its own merits. And it absolutely should be reported back to the ward councillors, and it should be resourced properly, which I don't think it has been for quite some time. But in terms of ward councillor involvement, I think this is not an area. I think we're crossing over into what is absolutely an operational issue, not a leadership issue, which is what the ward councillors are here for. So unless, Councillor Page, you have heard the arguments and you wish to take a different view, then I would support that the executive puts the paper through as it's written. Okay, Councillor Page, are you still of that opinion?
Yeah, no, I'm with you, Leader. I agree with, and you've summed it up more eloquently than I could. So thank you for that.
Okay. Okay. So I'm going to put that to the executive. We're being asked to resolve that the paper is accepted as is. All those in agreement? Okay. And just for the record, I vote that way as well. Okay. All right. Thank you. Right. Okay. Moving on to the householder's duty of care setting of the fee. That is Councillor Page.
Thank you, Chairman. So we've brought a paper to you today because the householders do owe a duty of care, and it's to get on top of that hoary old subject, fly tipping. So fly tipping is an offence, and it's an ongoing problem within Surrey Heath. And the corporate enforcement team, getting back to enforcement again, use a broad range of powers to deal with those offences. And the householders disposing of waste inappropriately is part of the problem. because very often they might go to a carrier that's not licensed, or use someone to dispose of their waste, and their waste ends up in the countryside, causes a problem to us in the environment. And under the Environmental Protection Act, we have to act. So this paper really is to seek approval for the fixed penalty notice amount to be charged, where we can trace back to a householder that it's come from that particular premises. What we're asking to resolve is that fixed penalty charge be set at £400, and that's essentially the paper tonight.
Okay, thank you. Am I just right in saying that £400 is the maximum that we're allowed to charge?
Yes, £400 is the maximum we're allowed to charge, and it's we feel that this is an important problem. Well, it's important. It is a problem, particularly in the areas in the rural areas where farm gates have been blocked, and we've had some big fly tips in Chobham and West End and Bisley, so it does affect the rural areas more than in town. We feel that if and with the right publicity on the back of this, that £400 is the right amount. Okay. It still doesn't cover the costs, frankly, of the enforcement and the cleanup, but it's the maximum that we can charge.
Okay, I saw Councillor Malvaginam and Councillor Bates's hand. So, Councillor Malvaginam.
Thank you, Chair. I have two questions, actually. A question to find out whether the residents are currently charged for any of this waste being collected, because I know I've disposed of mattresses from my home and they are being charged. Because the people who actually do the fly tipping seems to be people of lower income, and they may find it difficult. They may not have the right vehicle to take these things to the recycling center. And when they take to the recycling center, question two, are they being charged there? Thirdly, actually three questions. The final one is actually the increase in penalty. Why is it being increased? I mean, has the old penalty system totally failed, or we are not able to track people to actually impose it? Or don't we have any enforcement officers to do this? Maybe I'll come back to it once I receive the answer. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, not being picky, Councillor Malvaginam, but you said three. I only got two there. CRC charge and an increase in penalty. Was it two?
The second one was actually the charge at the recycling centre.
Right, okay. Okay. All right. Okay, let's come back to that. Councillor Bates, you were next.
Yes, thank you. Just on the point made by Councillor Malvaginam, my understanding is that what this is particularly aimed at are people who, in effect, are trying to undercut the council's waste service. So we do have a bulky waste service that he refers to, which I've used as well. But instead of using that service, there may be some unscrupulous people going around to particular communities and trying to say, oh, we'll get rid of that for you, mate, for a £5 or £10. And of course, what they're in fact doing is taking it round to dump it illegally in some of the other areas. So the householder, who probably doesn't know where it's gone and has no idea, is the one who's then impacted by that. So I think that's the primary aim of it. And I certainly agree that such individuals should be fined to the maximum level permissible. However, I do have an issue with the fact that we are suggesting that we do not discount for if paid within 10 days. I think that is naive. And I think that is not a good idea at all. And whilst, and actually it says in the paper, this is in line with other FPNs applied by the council. Well, it isn't. I mean, if I look at I've got the sheet in front of me here of all of the FPNs environmental that we do. So for example, if you deposit litter, or if you abandon a vehicle, or if you smoke in a smoke-free place, or if you fail to remove dog fouling, sorry, that doesn't have an early penalty. All these other ones, criminal damage, fly posting, they all have lower fees if you pay early. And the reason for doing that is because it actually saves us time and effort. So much as I would want to maximise the penalty for such individuals, there's also a practicality issue here for us as councillors regarding how much time and effort and resource do we want to take up in terms of dealing with this? And if there is no incentive at all for people to pay early, then the reality is we're actually going to spend even more than we are going to be doing in tracing up these fines. So my own view would be that actually you should have a 14-day charge of £300. That isn't, it just discounts it a little bit, but still is some degree of incentive. And I do think that is something that should be practically looked at. I appreciate that might be unpopular, but it's just realistic. You're going to spend far more than that in officer time chasing it for cases which go beyond 14 days. So frankly, I'm surprised it's not in there, because most of our environmental penalties do have an early payment reduction. And I think that really should be done for this one.
Okay, thank you. Any other, Councillor Tapper and then Councillor Alloway.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, I'm just a little concerned about the actual investigation process. My understanding is that all fly tips are reported through the council's website and go directly to Joint Waste Solutions, who are the people who actually go and attend and clear up these fly tips. To what extent do we have an agreement with Joint Waste Solutions that they will investigate as best they possibly can the potential source of any fly tip that they're called to attend to? Or could we assume that it's more likely that they'll simply clear it up, take it away, and we'll never actually find out who did it?
Okay, thank you. Councillor, I should just say I'm taking a note of all of these questions. I'm not ignoring them. I'm taking a note of them all, and then we'll come back and we'll go through them one by one. So, Councillor Alloway.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Oh, my note's gone. Hang on. Yeah, the prevention of fly tipping and householders' duty of care is welcome. And where domestic waste is concerned, it should be reasonably understandable that household living waste and DIY waste is what it is, and the recycling or refuge bins or CRC sites that facilitate for the householder. So that should be reasonably clear, I think, by what's available on the council websites. But could it be clarified that once a professional tradesperson is engaged and contracted to remove waste, it then becomes commercial, and a waste transfer note must be issued to the householder, so they have some defence if the waste is fly tipped, and they can have some sort of proof of defence that they've carried out their due diligence. And secondly, should there not be an appeal process like parking fines for these fixed penalty notices? And thirdly, I notice there's no councillor involvement with this policy or process either. Thank you. Okay, right. I think we've got a bunch of questions. Councillor Page, I don't know if you've been jotting them down or you'd like me to just give you a quick reminder of the questions. Or you want to, I'm happy for you to obviously have the officers jump in as you wish.
No, and I might rely on the officers, but I think what we're trying to do here is to balance up the cost that it costs us as a local authority to clean these things up, and the deterrent issue. And Councillor Alloway summed it up quite well. He summed up what services are available to the public, and I think we should re-advertise those. A licensed waste carrier should give a certificate to the householder, and the householder's defence should that fly tip happen after somebody's used a professional, then obviously there would be no penalty for that householder. But we would follow up with the householder about the business that was used. So I think that's fairly clear. I'll bow to, and I think it strays into David Mansfield's territory with the waste partnership. So I won't comment on those issues. But if Julia or any officers are on, if they'd like to answer some of those questions as well.
Let me just jump in on some of them that I know. Okay, Councillor Mavaganam asked about the CRC charges. I believe there are charges, and as Councillor Bates said, we offer a service as well where we'll take away bulky waste, and obviously there's a charge for that. Okay. Increase in penalty. I think that kind of answers both, actually. Increase in penalty and Councillor Bates' point about the FPNs. I read that, to be honest. There are two other fixed penalty charges where we charge £400 and don't give a discount, which is actually to do with fly tipping, and I think it was referring to them. One is if a business does it, my understanding. Okay. I can't remember what the second one was. There are three. This is the third of three. Okay, and my understanding is that those two are £400 and don't have a discount for the 400 if you pay early. Although I'll be happy to get some numbers on that from. Well, Rodney, I know you're looking at the screen, so I'll just look for clarification on that one. The Joint Waste Solutions, Councillor Mansfield, if you want to, but I know that Joint Waste Solutions, I've had very, very good reports of them being in very quickly, next day or even the same day, clearing it up. I think the question was more about how certain are we that they go through the rubbish and try and find names and addresses.
I can give you a reply if you want, Leader.
Yes, please.
Okay, yes, indeed. And I'm quite happy if the council would like to just send me an email, I'll send him details of the procedure we actually follow. We've been very successful in following up some enforcement actions across with Joint Waste Solutions, and that's continuing. So it's something we should be proud of, and I'm more than happy to share some of that information if he so wishes. Good,
thank you. I think Councillor Page answered the question about commercial. It seems, you know, seems harsh that a resident can say, can you take this rubbish away from me? A professional shows up and says, yes, I'll take it away, takes it away, and then just drives into the countryside and dumps it on the side of the road. Joint Waste Solutions then go through that waste, find an envelope, say, with the name and address of the originator of the waste, goes back to them and says, this is your waste that's been dumped, there's a £400 bill. If that person says, this is the company that actually did it, this is the company I've dealt with, etc., then I'm sure the council would then turn its attention to the company that dumped it, not the resident. But it's very difficult to tell from the rubbish on the side of the road whether it was the resident or the business. So we'd have to take that case by case. Okay. Appeal process, I think we're being led by the government's own rules here, although I'm happy to get clarification on that. And councillor involvement, again, I would go back to communication, yes, resource, yes, operational issues, we need to lead, not to be in the operational side. So I think, Adrian, who would you like to just have come in and answer the two questions that I haven't sufficiently answered?
Well, I'll answer one of them about the communication side, and I think the paper does include at 14 a section on PR and marketing, and I certainly would like to see that the fact that we produce some material for the householder which indicates where people can get rid of waste, how much it costs, but also if people are going to use a waste company or somebody to take their waste away, of what they can do to check the credentials of that company before it's being used. But I don't know if Julia's on the call, whether she can answer some of the other questions.
Okay, Julia, are you there? You're not on my screen. No, I see you, Councillor Alloway. We're just waiting for Julia to come up if she's here. I see Jenny. Is Julia on the call, Jenny?
No, she isn't. But if I could just pick on two of the points which have been raised. The first is in terms of fining householders. The law is quite clear that the duty of care is with the householder, and they have a legal responsibility, and so it is them that will get fined. Councillor Alloway also asked about rights of appeal. The right of appeal is to not pay the fine and go to court and have your day in court arguing your case. Because once you're in this process, you're in a criminal offence process. So you're not really in a discretionary process anymore, unfortunately. So that comes to the point where it actually moves out of all of our discretion, councillors and officers. The law takes over. So I do think we need to be quite clear on these issues.
Thank you. I'm going to go to Councillor Allaway and then Councillor Wheeler, and then Councillor Bates. But just before I do, what was the other where we charge £400 for fly tipping and don't give a discount?
That I can't answer that one, sorry. That's a bit beyond my knowledge of this issue.
Okay. Oh, Mr. Passion?
Yeah, Chairman, that's for fly tipping. And I confirm what Jenny was saying. It always has been a duty of care for householders to take responsibility for their waste. And, you know, without the fixed penalty notices in, the only way that we could force that would be to prosecute. So fixed penalty notices are an alternative to prosecution.
Okay, thank you. Right, so, sorry, Councillor Allaway, I'm going to come to you, but I just saw Mr. Ramatol's hand go up there.
Yeah, if it assures councillors, I'd just like to make it clear that before any fixed penalty or before we contemplate issuing any fixed penalty or even a prosecution, the process is for me as the head of legal to review all the evidence and make sure that the evidence is robust before it can then proceed to the enforcement team to then pursue the actual enforcement. So I will sign off any process for a fine or a prosecution.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I've got Councillor Allaway, Councillor Wheeler, Councillor Bates. Okay.
Yes.
So, yep.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, it was just to emphasise the nuance between a householder engaging someone who advertises to take away waste, as opposed to the builder or professional tradesman that you've got in to do work, that part of the contract is to clear the site. And would we be expected to have, you know, builders produce waste carriers license? Do you see the difference, what I'm trying to emphasise there? Because I could hire someone and there's people across the road, you know, they're having work done and part of their scope for their builder is to take the waste, but who knows if they're licensed. Should householders be asking builders, where's your waste carrier's license?
Yeah, I can't help but agree that that's a tough thing to take a view on, isn't it? The resident has to know to ask for a transfer document. That's a tough ask, but if that's what the law is, our job is not to actually try and rewrite the law, it's to try and work with it, isn't it? So Councillor Wheeler and then Councillor Bates.
Thank you. I think one of the things that we can do to support residents is actually have some information on our website as to where people can go to check that somebody is authorised to dispose of waste. So if we do a very simple Google, it takes us to fines, it takes us to how to report it. It doesn't readily take us to a link that allows us to check that somebody has a valid waste disposal licence. So I think that's something that we can do positively. It already says on our website that unlawful waste is charged at £400 a tip. And in fact, we offer £500 for information that leads to a successful prosecution. So
you could make a profit there.
I was going to say you know, I can dump my own, prosecute myself, and all the rest of it. So
dump your own waste and make £100 profit.
So I think possibly we need to look at that. But I really do feel that one of the first things that we could do is have something that easily takes our residents through to where we can check that somebody has a waste holder's license, and or to put on our website, which might be going a bit step too far, because I appreciate we'd have to keep it up to date. But actually to put down the other authorised carriers. I also think we can do more about letting householders know that we can remove bulky items. So maybe at the point where it talks about our fines and the remedial action that we will be taking if something is dumped, it would be good to have a link that says, did you know we can sort this out for you? Because I think most people would rather pay that little bit more if that information was readily available. And I think all of us as councillors, once that information is up there, need to take it upon ourselves to share it with our residents.
I think with the vast majority of people, we would be a preferred supplier, wouldn't we? I think. So I do think you make a good point. That I do think that, you know, we'd all rather do a health check than an autopsy, wouldn't we? And I think getting the word out there that we provide this service, reminding people like we're a business, that we're trying to make money, you know, we would do this marketing. The more that we can encourage people to use our services, the better. That's better than having to clean up after the fly tipping. Councillor Bates.
Yeah, sorry, I just wanted to come back to this issue about early penalties. Now, at the moment, on our own website, we have the list of fixed penalty charges, to which there's 20 different offences. 15 of them have an amount of a lesser penalty if they're paid early. In addition to that, and I appreciate it's a different service, exactly the same happens with parking. So if you have a parking ticket, you pay half, but it goes up if you have to take longer. Now, the head of legal very helpfully, and I'm sure he didn't do it deliberately, made the point for me, because if he has to spend time reviewing potential offences for people who haven't paid and we're looking at prosecuting, then we're going to be spending a lot more than £100 looking at cases which go on further. Now, obviously, some cases will have to go on further anyway because they meet the prosecution threshold, and you'd be looking at doing that in any case. But when we're considering a fixed penalty, then my view is that let's get the £300 off now, and then we don't spend another £300 trying to chase up £100. That doesn't seem to me very effective. And my view would be actually that the remaining 5 areas, and this particular area, is actually looked at with a view to having a 25% reduction for paying within 14 or 20 or 14 days. They've got to do it quickly, otherwise it kicks in. That is a practical view, basically. I'd much rather they pay the maximum, but we're going to spend a lot more than that chasing it. So my view is I think you should look at early penalties.
Okay, so that's the point. Can I just, Councillor Malvaginam, and then I'd like to ask Mr. Passion if he's got any view on how often we are making these fines and whether early payment would make a difference. So, Councillor Malvaginam.
I mean, I generally support Councillor Bates' view, but before the exec actually makes a decision on this, it would be interesting to know, actually it'd be useful to the exec to know what's how the arithmetic works out, whether how many people pay up front, on time, and how many actually we take them to court. It will be a good study before the exec actually finalizes this particular item. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. So, Mr. Passion, so coming down to the £400, as I understand it, is the maximum. We're allowed to offer a discount for early payment. And I understand that's a view Councillor Bates is making about it being pragmatic versus the emotional decision of people who can afford to pay after they've dumped, you know, getting a discount for just simply paying a couple of weeks early. But do you have a view on how often we offer it, how often it comes into play, etc., particularly to do with waste?
I don't really have the figures there, but I'm not sure we've served very many fixed penalty notices for fly tipping. We've got some numbers that I can probably give to members afterwards. But Councillor Bates is right. The most often fixed penalty notice we serve is for parking, and there is a reduction there, and that works extremely well in collecting penalty notices for parking. But I'm afraid I'm going to have to go back and get details about the numbers for the other littering offences.
Okay, thank you. I think it's not many. I take Councillor Bates. I tell you where it comes down to for me, and I'm happy to hear other views on this. What it comes down to for me is if you get a parking ticket, all right, you quite often have just screwed up, right? You booked 2 hours and you came back at 2 hours 10 or something. Okay, there was a parking sign up and you tried to follow the rules and you ended up, you know, it was a mistake and you pay. And if we pay early, then fine. Okay. Fly tipping is about you knowing full well that you're breaking the law. And if you get caught, you can turn a £400 fine into, say, a £200 or £300 fine. And it becomes part of the cost of doing business. You know, I guess that's where I'm coming from in terms of agreeing about not putting forward a discount for it. I understand what you're saying about the pragmatic effect of being pragmatic about collecting, but for me, it's about, you know, you're breaking the law when you're fly tipping, don't you? There's nobody does it accidentally. Okay. Councillor Wheeler?
Yeah, I just think the exception to this sometimes is residents. So I know that I've had people knocking on my door saying, I'm doing a job just down the road. Do you have anything you'd like me to take away for you? Because I can do it for 50 quid because I'm already doing it for one of your neighbours. So I think, you know, if you were naive or not familiar with it, I think a householder may inadvertently give somebody permission to go ahead and do that. So I think there are two different cases here. I think going back to the point that was made earlier by our monitoring officer, he will look at the legitimacy of the crime. If it's somebody that we've caught on CCTV or number plate recognition or whatever doing that repeatedly, absolutely right that they shouldn't have recourse to pay early and should pay the right fine. But if it is a householder who is inadvertently essentially being conned by somebody in order to have their rubbish disposed, I think we're in a bit more of a grey area. And I think to have the option to pay a reduced fee in those circumstances would seem to be quite sensible.
Yeah, I could see that. Okay. Any other comments? Any other questions? Oh, Councillor Bates, yeah.
Yeah, just very quickly, Leader. You made a point about people breaking the law, and of course that's true, but that is exactly the same as most of the other offences that are already contained within our environmental fixed penalty notices. So, for example, I think people know they're breaking the law if they deposit litter, to which there is an early fee reduction. So I personally don't accept the argument you're making. I agree with you, the sympathy about wanting to penalise to the maximum level. I think we all do that. And it's just the argument about how pragmatic or otherwise we are.
Yeah. Okay. Councillor Hawkins?
Thank you, Leader. I'd just like to say I think we should make residents more aware of actually what their duty is. That I have known some people where somebody turns up at your door and say, would you like that? If you happen to have left something, I think when we had a bathroom done, somebody turned up, would you like that taking away? And I think people are not really aware of that. It is that it could end up fly tips. So I think, the more publicity we could give, and perhaps put this in Heath's scene, sort of to publicise it, because not everyone is on the internet. People like to see things written down. And I think if perhaps we can publicise it so that people are aware, because they don't necessarily know. And as say, someone turns up at your door and you've got a load of rubbish, you have it clear out and think, oh, what a good idea. Yes, that's great. Because there's always someone, can I do this and can I do that? And I think perhaps more vulnerable people are not aware of that, what it may end up in somebody's gateway or on sort of a little side road or something. And I think we definitely need more publicity. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Councillor Jennings-Evans, I know you had your hand up earlier and I kind of missed it there. Did you have a comment on this?
No, that's absolutely fine. My query's been answered.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Councillor Page, you've heard the arguments that people have been making about, we understand that the £400 is the fine. Okay, there's an argument being made for having a discount for earlier payment. Okay, I know that can be any number that we set. I don't think we're limited to whatever it can be. Do you have a view on whether offering, say, a discount, let's say they pay 300 instead of the 400, if they paid, I think, in 14 days? Do you have a view on that?
No, I'm open to that. I just think that we struggle as a council with fly tipping. I think that the point about PR and marketing is a very strong one, and I think it's if we could say that there was a £400 fine and then market that and then provide a lot of help for householders with how to obtain help to get rid of their waste and give examples of what services are there for us, that would go a long way. And of course, Gavin Ramtahal's contribution tonight was good, because we wouldn't think of prosecuting or taking action against someone who was maybe duped into it if that was the case. So I'm minded that £400 is a cost which would stick in people's mind and be more preventative of this effort.
Okay. I wasn't quite sure. I wasn't sure if you were open to the suggestion about offering a discount, say it's 300 instead of 400, or whether you want to stick with the 400 and no discount.
Look, I really, I want the fact that we need to publicise the problem and to have a penalty for it. If there's a £300 early discount, then I'm okay with that.
Okay, all right, thank you. Councillor Wheeler, just if you could quickly, I mean, we're what, an hour and 20 minutes in and we're still on the first items. Okay, this is only the third item for discussion here, so we've got another 9 to get through.
I will be very quick. First and foremostly, I would just like to point out, because I would hate to give duff information, that I have now found on our website a link through to where I can check somebody's waste carrying license. So it's there, but could we make it a bit more prominent? So I didn't want the officers to feel that I had misrepresented their effort in getting our website right. So that's the first point. And the second point is that at the moment we're saying it's a £400 fine. So there's no big change there. But thank you very much to the website team. It is there. We could just do with making it a bit more prominent, but thanks.
Okay. All right. I think there's been some very good points. The one that was most persuasive to me was the fact we were dealing with a resident who may have taken it on trust that somebody was going to dump their waste correctly, professionally, and then they end up with us knocking on their door saying, do you realise your waste was dumped on the side of the road? Here's a £400 fine, and that's it. I still think that we should get a reasonable number, and I would propose that we offer, say, you can pay 300 instead of 400 if you pay within the 14 days. All right. Councillor Page, are you okay with that?
Yes, I'm happy with that, Leader.
Okay.
Chairman, I think that we could just change the recommendation there to say that that discounted penalty will be agreed.
Okay. All right. So I'll just ask the executive, are we happy to support that with the amendment? Okay, good. Yep, all carried. Thank you. Okay. Right. Item 4, Councillor Lewis. Right. If we're not going to be here till 11 o'clock at night, I'm going to ask people to keep their questions brief and their statements brief. So, okay, Councillor Lewis.
Councillor Leader. I apologise for chiming in, but we are an hour and 20 minutes, just to highlight that we normally take a break at an hour.
Okay.
For a screen break for everyone, but I'll leave that with you.
We're gonna tough out this this one item here. Okay. All right.
Okay.
Nobody mind. So, Councillor Lewis.
Okay, thank you, Leader. Yeah, hopefully this is a little less controversial. It's a regular item. It's a 6-monthly report on the receipt of SIL money. It's all the receipts are outlined in Appendix 1 to this agenda item. There's a slight difference to the normal one in the government have amended regulations to do with SIL because of COVID-19. And so our options are to note the income received for the period 1st of April to 30th of September 2020 in Appendix 1, and to note the amended SIL regulations due to the impact of COVID-19 on the development industry. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Now, we are only being asked to note this, okay? So unless anyone has any fundamental issues with the paper, I would just ask the executive if we are happy to note the amounts as per Councillor Lewis. Okay. Okay, good. That's carried. All right. We only have one more item before we are finished with, we complete part 1, taking into account Ms. Norris's point there. The authority monitoring report. All right.
That's me again, Chairman. Hopefully it will be a fairly quick one. So this is a technical report that we are required to publish on an annual basis, and it's simply that. It's to indicate where we are with our local plan, how far we've got with it. It's to approve the publication of our authority monitoring report, and it's been produced in line with the requirements set out in the Localism Act. So it's just a technical report to say how far we've got with the local plan. There is an annex which goes into much more detail about the elements of the local plan, and it's simply that.
Okay. So this is not a discussion on the objectives. It's not even a discussion on the annual plan itself. We're just being asked to resolve that this report, which is a progress report, is made public, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions or comments? No? Okay, excellent. I'll ask the executive to show of hands that we're happy to resolve that this report goes out as per the statement. Thank you. Okay, that's carried. Thank you. All right. We now move on to the exclusion of press and public before we move into part 2. Thank you very much for anyone who has stayed with us and watched the meeting.